Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I am your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co host, Brian McNichol.
Good morning. It is afternoon. We just went past noon, didn't we?
That's
Good
right.
afternoon. Hello, deplorables, drags, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, semi-fascists, and those dog-faced pony soldiers.
Yep. We knew we had to add
And we're not
something.
really committed to it. We're just sort of, you know, adjacent.
Yeah, seriously. I don't know. I mean, the president thinks that's a winning strategy for some reason, but
Yeah, the Washington Post this morning, there was a letter to the editor, and their letters are, uh, they're pretty militantly pro lib, whatever, back their editorial stance. But this somebody said, that was very divisive and dumb of Biden and a stupid idea, and he shouldn't have done it. And they put it in there. So, you never know.
yeah, give credit for them. At least you got the English version today, right?
That's right. That's right. So people don't. So people, I don't know if you saw it on my Facebook. I put this. So I'm one of the few people who takes home delivery anymore, right? Especially like where I live, there's 40, 50 residences right around me, and there's one paper out there, and it's mine, right? So, but so the other day I get it, open up the paper, and it's the Korea Daily. I mean, I can't read any of it. So,
Yeah, I mean,
I'm sure all the stories are accurate, but
yeah. I would, I'd be curious. I'd be curious as to what goes in there. I mean, since I don't read Korean, but I guess I get my wife to read it and tell me what's going on there. I will say, having visited Korea and read the English language Korean papers in Korea, um, it's heavily sanitized if you get the English language version. Um, if you the times I've been to Korea and read the English language version, their version of things, is like you kind of think that things are going along pretty swimmingly all the time in Korea, that there's like no crime or anything like that. None
no.
of that's ever in the paper. It's like it does
That's
exist.
one way to.
Yeah, it does exist, but it doesn't exist in the English language version that the tourists see, and the business people see, I guess. So it's kind of an interesting thing to see that going on there. But I did think it was it's always interesting because on your Facebook page, the knee jerk reaction, which I don't blame them, is just that it's the Chi Coms or something, kind of thing like that.
Yeah.
That was responsible for that. But there is a difference in the character set. Um, Though I don't blame your friends for saying that too, because how many times has the Post in the past, you know, accepted adverts from the
The
Chinese?
China Daily stuff, they still
Right,
do. So,
right.
and
So
it's like a full section. That's a huge amount of advertising dollars that they're getting to basically print Chinese government ordered propaganda.
exactly. So yeah, that's somewhat. Yeah, that's the way the Post works.
Yeah. I mean, and they should be free to do that. Like
Right.
like, for instance, this morning there's a story that, the documents they found at Mar-a-Lago or, Russian or somebody's nuclear capabilities or whatever. It's like you have to take that story with a grain of salt because it's unnamed sources, and the Post has a long record of abuse of unnamed sources, right? Of putting things in from unnamed sources that were nowhere near true in the final analysis. So, all those little things they do to, China advertising and, abuse of anonymous sources and so forth has taken a big toll on them in terms of credibility.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so I don't. Yeah, well, we'll kind of move back and forth, I guess, Liz, because I still want to talk about the whole semi-fascist thing. But since you go ahead, you went into the Mar-a-Lago thing. Yeah, I mean, when the Washington Post reports something, I mean, you see it on CNN and all the other places, just kind of like New York Times reporting, because they're considered kind of the papers of record. These guys, they're the ones with the most integrity, the venerable newspapers, all that kind of stuff. So if they, if they've discovered this amazing thing, we got to look into it and investigate it. But as you said, take the reporting by these newspapers with a grain of salt, because they have an agenda on out there.
Yeah, they haven't earned that trust.
Right.
And if they did have it, they've squandered it, right? It shouldn't be there anymore.
Yeah. And I mean, look, I mean, I have questions as to exactly what all these documents are and why Trump had all these documents and everything like that. But I'm not the expert. I'm not the guy who should be sorting it out. And neither are these media pundits either. I mean, they're not
Right.
experts into all this stuff either. But
Yeah.
there's but they sure let you know what they think, and they're trying to convince the American public that Donald Trump once again is working against American interests and everything like that.
And and it's like Obama has all of his, right, and they've never you don't see the records people jumping up and down and the FBI running over to kick in his door, right? I mean, if you can't recognize this as a political persecution of a political enemy, then you got to deal with the fact that you're never going to recognize one.
Yeah, and then you have
it's never going to be one.
And you have Hillary. Didn't Hillary say on something on Twitter or something like that, like never had any classified document, never had anything classified in my possession or whatever, and guess she kind of forgot about the emails that she had, and she's like, there is no Clinton standard, kind of a thing like that. No, I mean there's definitely people were treated differently. It depends on who you are and who's running the show here. But if you look at the DOJ and Justice Department, you're like, what is their reputation today anymore? I mean, this is just more
right.
comedy of errors, just this crazy stuff going on here. How do you hold these guys up to anything that says I respect them?
And now at this point, because we're always told it's the leadership, right, and the rank and file, they're good, hardworking Americans, this, that, and the other. If you want to restore the credibility of DOJ and FBI, at this point, it's got to be a pretty close to root and branch house cleaning, right? I mean, pretty much everybody's got to go. I mean, down to the secretaries, right? Because the whole thing's compromised, and all these people have performed duties in the service of these illegal and immoral and predicated raids and so forth. They have to go. I mean, you were part of it. You didn't stand up to it. Just following orders. What happened to Lieutenant William Calley for saying just following orders? He went to prison, right? So you're going to belong in prison. So it needs to be root and branch. Get them out. And yeah, we'll lose some capabilities for that, right? Because the FBI will be left blind to some things. So will DOJ. You'll have to rebuild expertise, but it's worth it at this point. You have people who have perverted the American system of justice, and they got to go.
Yeah, I mean, well, you're bringing up the name of Cowley. When was the last time I heard anybody mention that name? Shows that you've been around a while.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Not as young as I look.
Yeah,
and I don't look that young.
Yeah, no, but I mean, you're right. I mean, this is the thing, is that this stuff is right now has gotten to be so ingrained, is that you've got to do a major house cleaning here. It's kind of, I mean, you can even, I guess, kind of look at, make an analogy to baseball or whatever, where teams do the tear down, and then they basically start rebuilding from scratch, and they tank for a while. They go through this long process to rebuild. For years, you're in the wilderness. You're losing 100 games a year or whatever, but then you turn it around. I mean, obviously, I'm pointing at your Astros as being a case in point of a team that was magnificently successful at doing this. Kind of the big example of.
We were 51 and 1-11 one year. And, 3 years later, we were in the league championship series. We've now been in the league championship series 5 straight years. 1-1, been in 3 World Series, 1-1. So
yeah,
won 3 World League Championship series and 1 World Series. So that's pretty good 5-year run, and they're almost sure to win their division and be back in the playoffs this year. So
yeah, no, I mean,
they do have to go down to come back up sometimes.
Yeah, and I understand that. Government, I mean, they're just, that's not the way they're attuned. They don't think like that. But, in the sense of what Donald Trump tried to do as president, I mean, his drain the swamp, it's kind of that you need to go in there and you need to actually go root it out. I mean, this is a long process, in the sense of when you do this to replace the people that you get rid of, it's not a one-to-one. It's going to take time to get the expertise built back up and get the people in there. but there'll be long-term benefits for doing
Yeah,
so instead of keeping these people in there who are winding up just screwing up the whole thing in the end. And
that's
so
right.
we get to this point where, the media, we know where they are, but they rely on the DOJ and the Justice Department, and they're still holding them up as venerable, reputable institutions and whatnot. But when you look behind the scenes, you're like, no, these things have got their problems at DOJ, their problems at the FBI, and we've got to do some major house cleaning. Yeah, we're going to hurt. We're going to be hurt a little bit in the short term, but in the long run, we will be much better if we will
Yeah,
do that. But that takes a lot of courage to do that. That takes somebody who really wanted to go and do it. I mean, I think given time, the Donald Trump style would have been able to do much more of that.
yeah,
Switching presidents, didn't help us in that sense. I mean,
right.
there's status
Well, I mean,
quo.
you got an institutionalist. You got someone very much interested in protecting the bureaucracy, right, and directing the bureaucracy to do his political dirty work, right, which
Right.
Trump did not do. The DOJ was not out persecuting people on behalf of Trump. They are out persecuting people on behalf of Biden, right? It's very much a political tool now, and it's lost the trust of the American people.
Yeah, and Biden, I mean, he has, made a decision really to go back to the old ways, and undo as much of the Trump changes and some of the good things that he did, because that's what he knows, and he kowtows to every interest group and everything there is that out there, and does Joe
And he
Biden?
keeps, that's a great point, because he also, you see him, he when he signs these bills, right? Like, he's been out touting the forgiving the college debt and his economic bills and so forth, right? And he's like, we signed a bill, we beat pharma, we did, and people are looking at that as like, this is not a war with pharma, right? You're giving us populist garbage, right? You're not helping us, right? So, I mean, I think that just, the sign the bill bumps are dissipating. People are not, just getting huge omnibus, super expensive legislation across the finish line doesn't impress people anymore. They've begun to see that, yeah, there's been a lot of bills signed over the years and money spent, and I'm still in the situation I was in. So maybe my salvation will not come from big, expensive omnibus bills, right?
Right, and I mean, it makes good theater or press. I mean, and Biden, I mean, they're desperate. The Democrats are desperate for anything that makes them on the surface look good, right? And you win over, at least temporarily, all those people that are going to have their debt forgiven. But there's still a lot of questions about it, right? Because is what he's doing there, is it completely legal? Does
Right.
he have the right to do it? That's a kind of a gray area. It's
Also,
not.
the big question is, how does the program go on, right? How do we loan money for people to go to college next year, knowing that, they're going to take those loans, knowing there's a pretty good chance they won't have to repay them. So because you borrow money in a completely different way if you don't think you're going to have to repay, right? I mean,
Right. I
that's
mean, well,
not borrow, it's give at that point.
right. I mean, one of the problems is that with this program, if he pushes it through and they actually forgive all this debt, all future borrowers are going to be looking for the same thing. And so the mindset is going to be different. They're like, well, it's like, if I borrow the money, why do I bother even making payments? Because I'm hoping that the government, particularly a Democrat, if the Democrats have power, they will do the exact same thing. And that this
Right.
is just one of a series of loan forgivenesses, debt forgivenesses that will occur over time. That it's almost like codifying this thing into it. And
Yeah.
it just makes a mockery of the whole system. It's not helping the students at all. The colleges and universities, they don't care, really, if you forgive the debt, because they're still, we're still going to go out there where, we get to price education the way we want to price it. If we don't, we can increase it maybe with the thought that,
Yeah.
hey, people can
That's why
go.
their prices are so high, is that
Yeah.
there's all this government money sloshing around,
Right. I
You
mean, and
end the student loan program, what happens to tuition?
right.
Goes way down, right? Because
Yeah.
people won't have it to pay. Okay. If you end the student loan, what happens to, queer, gender, literature, theory degrees, right? There'll be a few of them left, but for the most part, people are going to have to, if they're going to invest the money in college, and it'll be their money getting invested, right, up front. Okay, then they're going to say, okay, I'm going to learn something I can cash in on. I'm not going to read and think all my life. I'm going to, get me something I can make a living at.
Yeah,
read and think on my own time.
And we have seen an explosion of interesting, I'll quote, interesting majors that have popped up and things like that as a result of it. I mean, college universities for the most part, a lot of bloat in there, right? They've expanded, largely because of the student loan program that allows them to do this. I mean, what's the relationship between the tuition to what the real value of the education is? In most cases, you can't really make a good argument for why these colleges, universities charging what they do.
In Michigan, University of Michigan spending what, $40 million on diversity officers.
Yeah.
I mean, that's somebody that comes from somewhere, right? Some combination of tuition and government money, right?
Right. Got Bob's comment here.
Yeah, that's right. That's what happens. You get people hooked on charity, on free stuff. Oh, we got to pay for this? That's uncalled for.
And that this is what's happened with all kinds of government programs. I mean, we've argued about Obamacare. Obamacare's how old is it now? And the Republicans had talked about repealing Obamacare, and they were able to kind of nip away at some of the edges and take care of some of those things.
Take the important parts out.
Yeah, but I mean, in there was provisions for your son or daughter, your kids could stay on your insurance program till what, like 23 or something
26.
like that, or 26. Which well, that's a boon to the parent. There's no way that was ever going. Once that's in there, no way you're going to be able to get that out of there.
Right.
Once you give them certain things, you cannot take that back. I mean, I think there were a lot of arguments with the Americans with Disabilities Act, and I'm like, look, once it gets codified, once it's in there, even if you don't like it, and other people agree that it's wasteful and unnecessary, how do you get that out of there?
Yeah, but the thing about ADA though is, there was an end to the costs, right? You built your ramp, whatever, you made your building accessible, and then you were done paying for it. You have to update it a little bit as time goes on, but in the main, we've absorbed that cost. Society has paid that cost through whatever means. There are sirens going by. Anyway, pay attention, Brian. But this, the cost of Obamacare goes on and on and on, right? It just doesn't end.
Right, and then that's we knew this. Republicans knew that this was going to be a problem, particularly with the Medicaid expansion. Part of this is that like everything else, particularly with politicians, but particularly with Democrat politicians, is that it's all kind of short term and there's a lot of finagling of the numbers. They do these projections and they get that and they fudge, they kind of mess with the numbers and say, this is what all it is. It's like, well, the government's not going to be paying the whole freight of Medicaid expansion forever. You're going to have to start paying part of that. And those costs are not going to go down. They are going to go up. And, when we had COVID, we had tremendous Medicaid expansion. There are a lot of states that are really hurting because that's a state-run program, and they're now saddled with huge costs, to run these programs. And
that's the thing. What's left of Obamacare now is the exchanges, which are relatively harmless. Here's a place to look up where to buy insurance, right? And a huge expansion of Medicaid, right? So like the day Obamacare passed, New York State added 525,000 people to the public dole for health care, right? 525,000 people in one day, right? That's what Obamacare was about, was dumping all these people into government health care.
Yeah, and a lot of people who wind up in those programs, they're going to be very costly. Their profile will require lots of care, and drive the costs way up.
Yeah, the things that make you poor generally also make you unhealthy. So.
Right, exactly. So it's a big problem. I mean, I struggle, in my mind. I'm like, okay, so I am now, because of my employment status, largely a beneficiary of Obamacare subsidy. I really don't like it, but it's there, and it's going to save me hundreds of dollars, probably $10,000 a year, for which we're all paying for it. I mean, I'm paying for it in a part because it's a subsidy by the government, which just got extended for 3 more years. By the time I don't need it anymore, I'll be qualified for Medicare. So, like, hey.
and no offense, but should you be the target of subsidies?
No, I mean, I shouldn't. I
right?
shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And the thing
You're
is,
okay.
So the thing about this that really, it just gets me about how this program is set up, is that, when you sign up, you have to basically estimate your income, and it's the subsidy is based on your income. So the lower the income, the greater the subsidy, the lower price you pay for your health insurance. And I still think that, for what the income I will have this year, which will be greater than I will have next year, I'm still thinking, like, that's a lot of money, considering that I still had a halfway decent income or will have, for 2022. 2023 is a whole different ball game, but those are extremely generous subsidies. I mean, the subsidy, I mean, you could still make $100,000 and you still get a pretty decent subsidy. And I'm like, why are people at $100,000? What do they need the subsidies for? I just don't understand that, but,
right.
but it's the same thing. I mean, the student loan program too. I mean, this forgiveness thing is that, the forgiveness is pretty generous, right? I mean, you can have a pretty decent income, from my
and
perspective,
walk away from your loan.
You're going to get this forgiveness. I'm like, why?
That's right.
It's just mind-boggling, how much we give away with all of this. But the Democrats are very good about giving away the money, because they make these projections, and then people try to buy into that. But I mean, there definitely are people trying to rip these projections apart and say, this is, it's going to be 500 million, it's going to be $1 billion. I mean, there's some pretty lofty figures out there about what the real cost of this is. But yeah, a lot of people are going to get a lot of loans forgiven, and it's going to be a complete mess. I mean, my kids all went to Brigham Young University, so private school. If you're a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you pay one tuition. If you're not, you pay another tuition. It's kind of like having in-state, out-of-state, type of a thing. But I think even the other, the higher tuition is still not outrageously high, and the church member, tuition is extremely, low. I mean, part of it is to just basically reflect the fact that church members contribute so heavily through their tithing and everything else,
right,
that it subsidizes but they don't have to receive public funding for any of this. They run their operation, and they can be more or less free of government intervention of a lot of stuff. And right, therefore, it works well. It works well for them. And their needs, you get a good education at a relatively low cost when you go to school like that. The kids don't need the Harvard priced, the Ivy League priced education to compete. They get a very good education out of that. A lot of the schools at BYU are very well, highly ranked. And I think, cost benefit analysis, I think it's a better deal. I mean, I think a lot of people do just fine doing that versus their Ivy League counterparts. It's just that, Ivy League counterparts have the Ivy League, and does it has a really
those networking opportunities and all that.
Yeah, and everything like that. So anyway, I do want to go back a little bit to what we start off just, kind of alluding to with this whole, semi-fascist thing like this. Biden has made this big deal. I mean, he's really done a very good job of trying to divide America, right? I mean, right, he's gone after the MAGA Republicans, semi-fascist, all of these things, and how dangerous this is. And I find this somewhat amusing in the sense of, I keep thinking about Obama. When Obama was running for office, when he got elected, he talks about, he talked a lot about bridging that divide, and it got wider. And now you've got Biden, his vice president is now the president of the United States. The Democrats talk about, how divisive Republican politics are, but look at Joe Biden right now. I mean, he is really trying to separate the country, and they continue to use Trump as the boogeyman, right? I mean, it's like Trump is bad. We need the evil guy because we still can't quite figure out how to win an election here in November because inflation's high, gas is coming down, but
well, not anymore.
it was 242 when he took office. It's still it's still
It's
350.
not coming down anymore. It's starting to inch back up a little.
Yeah, I mean it's going to probably we're in a kind of a plateau phase or whatever. It's pretty. I know my last.
And the Saudis said last week, the OPEC has agreed to cut production. So
that's going to be
now till election day, it's going to start ramping back up.
Yeah, and that'll be another bad story for them. And inflation, moderating. Exactly what is moderating? When you've gone from if you go from 9 to 7, is that showing a lot of progress? I mean, that's still
all they're saying is it didn't go from 9 to 9.3. It stayed at 9. Oh, so there's no inflation. No, there's 9% inflation. It's just not any worse than it was last month.
That's right. I guess
as bad as the catastrophe.
I did say a few weeks ago, and it was basically 0 or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one lie after the other. And this guy, he's not. It's not really that he's attempting to divide America. He's attempting to divide the Republican Party, right? Because he realizes if the Republican Party stays intact, Trump will be the president in 2025, right? Trump's pulled considerably ahead of him in the polls. Now it's like 6-8 points ahead of Biden in straight up polling, right? And Republicans, a lot of Republicans have misgivings about whether Trump should be the nominee in 2024. But he, at this point, he's pretty much, if he decides to run, he will be the nominee. He's about 40 points ahead of DeSantis. This speech actually added about 9 or 10 points to his lead over DeSantis. Among Republicans, a lot of Republicans came home to Trump because of this, right? But they believe that like behind Liz Cheney stands an army that could bring down the Republican Party, right? And so, I mean, I don't know what to do to convince them otherwise, and it may not even be worthwhile to convince them otherwise. But Liz Cheney lost. She went from winning by 37 points to losing by 39 points. Okay, so I mean that's a pretty dramatic switch, right? The people who come out anti-Trump, they're 10 people who voted for impeachment, right? 9 of them are gone, and the other one's on his last legs, right? They're immediately yeeted right out of the caucus, right? Because voters are like, hey, you took their word against our word, right? And they should have done it. Pete Meyer, he's he would have been a great asset in Congress and all this. You're paid for your judgments up there, right? And he made a terrible political judgment. He got what he deserved. So, we are cleansing the party of anti-Trump. It doesn't mean that everybody has to follow Trump, but the people who are actively working for the other side against him, we're not going to give you resources and pretend to like you anymore, right? Because you're working against our side, right? So he thinks that he can cleave off the Trump supporters from other conservatives, and I don't see. I mean, even the people that I know that are not, totally for Trump, are not going to be cleaved off into some Biden, quasi-Democrat light nonsense, right? I mean, are you a candidate for that? Or could you be convinced that to go over to the Democrats, so you can oppose Trump? I don't, I think it's, yeah. I mean, they're working for unity, and it's like, I think that's, I'm not even sure that that's a goal they should be espousing, right? I'm working for America, right? It's like, people are going to disagree with you, whatever you do. It doesn't matter. It's like, whatever you think of Trump, you couldn't have done much more for the economy, right? We had 1.5 million more jobs than job seekers. We had 5,500 a year added to household income in just 3 years, compared to 908 for Obama, 448 for Bush. Okay. Everybody had a job, lowest unemployment ever for Black, Hispanic, teens, lowest in 60 years for women, right? And coming out of a flat, 10 years or 12 years of economic doldrums, immediately revived the economy, and these guys are, they quashed all that. Markets going down, 2 straight quarters of negative growth, 9% inflation, $5 gas, they destroyed a good thing. And now they want to cleave off part of us to attack the people who are standing for the thing that works. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about that. I mean, that he's definitely trying to divide the party. But that's a problem. I mean, one problem, just in general, just if you're calling MAGA Republicans semi-fascists, I mean, Trump got what, over 70 million votes or something like that.
Yeah, 75 million, more than any president ever got seeking re-election by far.
So are you calling all of those people semi-fascists, or just the ones that are really the real MAGAs? Not everybody who voted for Trump necessarily is a MAGA Republican per se,
right?
But a large majority of them were, and it doesn't seem like a smart strategy to go and alienate people. I mean, to me, all that does is just basically reinforce and harden those people to say, oh, we're now going to redouble our efforts to make sure we retake the White House. If we showed any lackadaisical lack of enthusiasm here recently and anything, you've just galvanized us now.
You rattled the cage, buddy.
Yeah,
the other thing is like the Republicans, they have a chance here to do some serious damage, right? Because this is, the stuff flowed away from the Democrats when this happened. This was bad for them. This was, this told a lot of people who were in the middle, who, like people in Pennsylvania legitimately trying to decide between, Oz and Fetterman, Mastriano and Shapiro, that, these guys are going to consider me a fascist, right? I mean, and like my neighbor who's for them is not a fascist. Like I go to church with this guy. I know he's not a fascist, right? So when you start, you're setting up cognitive dissonance where people know that you're characterizing people they personally know improperly, right?
Yeah, I mean, Democrats are kind of infamous for playing a race card and using that to their advantage. But do you want to play like what I'll now call the F card here or whatever? I mean, this is to me, you bring up the word fascist, and I just think that you're going down a rabbit hole. This is not a path you want to go down, at all. I mean, this is just whoever is advising Biden, whoever wrote that speech is absolutely wrong. They need to go because that's just the wrong thing to do. The President of the United States should not be out there attacking any American, disparaging any American, whether or not they voted for them or not. It's like, you don't go and you don't do this, even if you are trying to, as you say, cleave off, try to split the Republican Party. You said misgivings about Trump, so look, I would have misgivings about Trump as a 2024 nominee. If he winds up being the nominee, I will vote for Donald Trump, but I do have my own misgivings. And I was is Joe Biden's speech going to does it do anything to say I'm going to go for a Joe Biden light or some Democrat light policy? There's no way. I mean, part of that too is just that the track record of the Biden administration since they took office has been horrible. They're trying to put perfume on a pig in essence, and they can't do it because we have like we saw we've been talking about gas prices, inflation, just how we're in a recession by technical standards with the two quarters of negative growth. We're not really going forward. I mean, they keep talking about unemployment numbers. Well, that's fine, except that we've got a lot of people suffering on other fronts, and that's not the be all end all to everything like that. There's a lot of things to parse with unemployment numbers anyway, and people are having problems. I mean, there are things that are not being reflected yet, but there are layoffs that are occurring. There are companies
Yeah,
that are
yeah.
cutting
The
back.
employment, I was going to say, the employment picture is darkening
It
by
is.
the day.
It is. It is. I
Significant.
mean, there are going to be some jobs that are still kind of begging, but there are a lot of other areas where, especially when you have something like big tech, which they've announced lots of, belt tightening, that they're not going to be hiring and they're going to be
Yeah.
cutting back and doing this stuff. Well, big tech is a huge employer of Americans,
Yeah.
and you know, and so it creates a problem. If big tech isn't hiring, what else is going to happen? How does all that reverberate throughout the economy? I also have a general question about where we are, job wise, because I saw this thing on CNN, and talking about a Gallup poll or whatever. Gallup says that they're 70 million, employable Americans or something like that, and very few of them want to return to the office. But you're seeing corporation after corporation saying you've got to return to work at least 2-3 days a week, and there's kind of major revolts going on. It's like, are we becoming have because of COVID, are we becoming the work from home economy, and is that a good thing? Are people just saying, hey, if I can't do this anymore, I'm just not taking that job. I'm going to go off and do something else, or live off my savings, or find another way. I don't know exactly where we're going. There's no doubt that COVID kind of reshaped things, but I don't know whether or not the Democrats, know exactly how to handle this changing economy. How the post-COVID economy looks different, and can they cope with that and handle that? I mean, they've been boosting labor unions, but I look at these service industries. They go. You've got Starbucks, big liberal company, lots of liberal money, but one by one their stores are being unionized. That's actually not good for Starbucks. That pushes up their wage.
Starbucks is fighting it too,
Right, they're
closing
fighting
stores and all this kind of stuff, right?
Their costs are going up because they know it's like, if we have to keep dealing with this, I mean, $12, $15 coffees, fraps, or whatever espressos are not that far in the distance when you do that, and so that becomes a problem. I mean, you can't sell. There's a certain price point where you will not be able to sell your product like that, right?
Right.
I mean, we've all seen it. If you go to any fast food restaurant or whatever, we have seen that creeping up of prices of whether or not it's a burger, fries, shakes, whatever. All those things have been going up because the cost pressure, just from the general input, right? Just from the cost of goods, not even talking about the fact that most of these guys are paying $15 or more per hour to try to staff their stores, and they still can't find enough people,
Right.
to do this. So this becomes a worry about whether or not we get into a kind of a stagflation kind of an issue.
Yeah, I believe we are in a stagflation. I think that's where this is going.
Yeah, and so we've got a lot of things that we have to kind of get concerned about, but I don't know.
And nothing on the horizon to address it, by the way.
Right.
I mean, it's just going to play its, they're going to tighten the credit, I guess. The Fed's going to keep tightening credit, and which will make it worse in the short term, right? But there's no ameliorative measure coming out of the White House. They're all they can think is spend more money, buy out more constituencies.
Yeah, I want to ask you this as
void of serious thought over there.
Right. I want to ask you this as a parent of school-age children too. It's like this is becoming something I've been trying to. I haven't studied a lot of it, but I've been kind of sort of. It seems to me, my observation right now is that we're seeing a lot more teacher strikes or threatened teacher strikes across the country, and they're looking for better working conditions, higher wages, and things like that. I will not say that teacher wages. In a lot of cases should not be improved, because I think for public schools, there probably can be some improvement to that effect in some areas. But I mean, what kind of an effect does this have? I mean, we're coming out of COVID, and the schools are trying to catch up for the learning loss, trying to get back. They're trying to, most of them are trying to drop their mask mandates. They want the in-person thing. But then you've got this potential disruption of school teachers who are supposed to be in the interest of, their interest is supposed to be on the kids and education. But then they come up, and they're saying, we want more money and all this kind of stuff. I mean, what's the future of public education? I mean, are we entering a period where we're going to start seeing a lot of teacher strikes? I remember, when I was younger, we had teacher strikes and things like that. It had been fairly peaceful for a while, but now it seems that they're coming back in vogue. And with liberal cities, they don't really seem to fight back too much on that.
Yeah, I think that the teachers are playing a losing hand. For one thing, uh, I saw a commercial, I guess, out in Washington or Seattle area. They're talking about going on strike. And the teacher says they need to pay us for our expertise. We're experts, in our field, and we need to be paid like experts in our field. Okay, there's way too many of you, and most of you have only a master's degree to be considered expert. I mean, a bachelor's degree, right? Most teachers, they have professional development. So most of them get on a track and they eventually do end up with a master's or more. But when they're hired as recent, a lot of them recent college graduates, right? So, your expertise is minimal, right? And we don't know, I mean, given the reading and math proficiency rates in the country, we don't know anymore how much value to put on the expertise you have developed, right? Are we, is the right stuff getting communicated in education school, right? In teacher school, right? We no longer have any real assurance of that given the results, right? There's a lot of competition now. These states are, Arizona, Florida, others are, making the dollars chase the kids. So that, like, if a kid goes to a private school, the money that was going to educate that kid in the public school goes to the private school, right? That it's actually educating him. I think in Arizona, if a student leaves for a private school, the public school system still gets $4,000 for that student, and the student has up to $7,000 to spend on tuition. So everybody who can get out now can get out. It's a bad time for, your customers aren't captive anymore. Bad time to be demanding a raise, right? So, I mean, I don't think that that's where to go to improve education. If they can show me that, those reading and math proficiency scores will climb along with their salaries, I'm willing to take another look at it. But right now I look at, like Montgomery County's over there, I think, 22% of the people on the payroll or whatever are administrators making more than $100,000 a year. So you want to save money, you want to, help the classroom. You don't get rid of those administrators. I mean, slim that down. That's no one's climbing on their math or reading proficiency over that. Schools are not delivering. And so, to come around and say, hey, we're not really doing the job you pay us to, but pay us more is ridiculous, right? So, unless you show me that more money gets me more results, I don't think American people are very excited to hear your thing. Yeah, that's right. Bob says that. Bob's a good example of that too. He went and got him some expertise and stuff. It's real expertise. It's many years of schooling and experience and ideas challenged by others and actually working through these problems. And, so graduating from JMU with a teaching degree does not make you an expert on anything.
Right. Exactly. And then I think that you've got, there is no replacement, for real world experience. I mean, if you can have a teacher who's actually been out and experienced some things in the field, that is infinitely more valuable than the person who's gotten the college degree, gotten a teaching certificate thereafter and then gone for a master's or whatever. That's all educational thing. And there's nothing wrong. I have no problem with people getting a good education, but boy, that real world experience and that's what helps make you the expert in the field, because you've gotten to see it up close and personal. And then you can relate that to people rather than just a lot of theory and a lot of other things that you keep, right. The people tend to espouse, and that doesn't, how many times have people, gone from the college, world in the sense of, you get your degree and then you go start working and then you're like, this is nothing like what I was taught.
Right. And the other side of that is like, I've been in the writing business my whole life. If George Will applies for a writing thing, right, he's going to be able to demand more money than me, right? Because he's more famous, his writing is more respected, right? Why is it the presumption that the best way to handle this is to pay all teachers the same, and give them their step grades for, I've been here 3 years, I get the 3-year salary. I've been here 4 years, I get the 4-year salary. Why aren't we making those compensation decisions individually, teacher by teacher? Why can't the principal do that? because if the principal can do that, then the good teachers will make more money and the bad teachers will find that, economically, it doesn't really pay for them to be in this business and move on, which would be very much a positive thing. You keep the ones that are doing well and you get rid of the ones who are not, right? Of their own volition. You're not firing anybody. There's not work rules or whatever. Why is it that teacher salaries need to be a collectively bargained thing? Why can't they just do that one-on-one? I think you'd get a lot better education out of it.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's move on to energy policy here as we get down to the end. So we got a couple of things. One was a statistic that showed that federal leasing for oil is now at its lowest level since Nixon. I was like, oh my gosh. All right. And I think it was only really lower, like, when they first began, with Harry Truman. So, I mean, here we are in the middle of this, we've had $5 gas that we've already experienced and all these other issues. We've got these refinery capacity issues. We need more oil. And here's the Biden administration, ratcheting it back so that we've gone back, almost 50 years in time for that. That's one side of it. And then the other thing is just this whole issue going out in California, right? So California, where Jennifer Granholm is saying, like, they're the model, this is a model we want the nation to follow. They're struggling with a crisis. There's been a lot of hot temperatures. They're trying to avoid having the rolling, brownouts and things like that. They want to electrify the country. They want to. They banned the sale of gasoline powered cars starting in 2035. But they're telling people you can't do this and you can't do that. Don't run your air conditioner. Don't do this because we're running out of electricity.
Your choice on the 102-degree day is to run your air conditioner or charge your car.
Yeah.
Right. I mean. And this guy wants to run against DeSantis. I mean, what will those debates be like? Holy cow. California is the model for the country for something, that's for sure. But it ain't what Jennifer Granholm thinks, right? That's the model for how not to do it. It's been done with government mandates that have created shortages of everything you need, okay? And it's because of just dilettantes who don't understand energy policy, making consequential policies on people that, they have no idea of the outcome. They just think, like, if we just outlaw fossil fuels, the nice man with the green energy will show up and fix everything. The nice man cannot do it. He does not have the capability to do it, right? It doesn't matter how nice he is or how much he wants to help. It's not there. We don't have that kind of capacity, and we won't for many years beyond the deadline that California and others have set for ending, I guess Washington and a couple of others followed suit for ending gas-powered cars, right? It's just not there. The Department of Interior has been slow walking leases since Biden took office. And by slow walking, I mean not approving them. Their just thing is just hold the paper. Just don't say yes or no. Just don't say anything. Just collect the paper and keep it. Right. And that's their objective. That's what they're trying to accomplish. It's not an accident. It's by design. And Joe Manchin discovered this during a hearing. Okay. So the way that the Inflation Reduction Act, which has not done anything, nor will it, to reduce inflation, was passed, was they convinced Joe Manchin, that we'll fix this, that we'll fix the oil leasing and we'll fix the natural gas pipelines so that New England does not freeze to death this winter, right? Because New England has a problem beyond any of the rest of us. It doesn't have any of its own resources, and it's almost entirely dependent on natural gas piped in from, the shale mining in Pennsylvania and West Virginia and places like that. And Biden wants to shut down all those pipelines. He wants to make rules that make it where it's unaffordable to operate those pipelines. They don't care. They really think they can, just force green energy to be the dominant energy here in the next, and really the timeline's getting short now. It's September 7th. By December 7th, they better have this figured out, right? Because by December 7th, New Hampshire, Connecticut, those places are going to be pretty darn cold, right? So they're making nonsensical contra national security energy policy decisions, right? That aren't in the best interest of the country, all for fictitious global warming. It's not even occurring.
And I'm beginning to wonder too if it doesn't also accelerate the migration, the movement of Californians out of California. I mean, they lost a congressional seat, right, in this last census.
They lost two.
They lost two? Okay.
Yeah. And until 2010, they had gained seats in every census since they came into the Union. So, I mean, this is right? The graphs, everything's trending downward in California.
Yeah, you can't tell me. I mean, it's like this is a result of these policies. It's the high taxes. It's all the regulation. It's stuff like this, right? I mean, you're trying to ban gas-powered cars and all this stuff like this, and with the post-COVID economy where people don't have to, where the bigger a lot of corporations said, particularly the tech guy said, you can work from some other location. You will never have to return to the office again for some of these guys. The need to be in California is a lot less. And,
right.
We know that, the Apples, the Googles, the Netflixes, all these guys have been big employers in California. But if they tell their employees they can work in Nevada, Arizona, Utah, Idaho, even in Nebraska, wherever, and they can do their work there, because especially if it's just a lot of software development work, they can do that. They can then zoom in or whatever for other meetings that they have to have with developers, and they don't have to have that footprint in California. They start cutting back on office space and all their overhead. But all of a sudden, all those people paying all those taxes goes away. Their population goes down. Next census, they could lose another 2 seats. They could lose 3 seats. Who knows? Yeah. I mean, they're not in a good situation. Who's Gavin Newsom? Who's he playing to at this point in time, except for national aspirations? Like, I'm going to be the green energy candidate, right? Yeah. You're falling on your face right now because this is not going to fly.
And he's campaigning against DeSantis, who's going the other route, and everyone wants to move there, and costs are going down, and everything except for a place to live, because so many people want to live there, right? That I mean, Florida is viewed as doing it right by not doing what DeSantis. I mean, that'd be a great policy argument to have. Yeah, and that's right. So they also came out that like the utility providers can control your thermostat. They can limit the amount of cool you get in your air, right? That just come out in the last few weeks that they can do that because they've started to do it. They're like, well, we're just not going to let you cool your house that much, So you don't need to do that if you're pursuing an everything energy policy. If you're pursuing a sensible energy policy, we had energy independence. Let's not forget, we had energy independence when Biden took office. Now we have scarcity all over the country, and all these weird rules coming in to cover the scarcity, to provide for the scarcity. The scarcity was imposed by the government, the administration of Joe Biden. It's not real. We have the energy.
Yeah. On this thermostat thing, which came out of Colorado, so 22,000 households, people got to realize, I mean, it was in the story, but that's been downplayed a lot. Said, look, the utility basically offered a program very similar to what a lot of other utilities offer. It's like, you sign up for a program. They gave them $100 credit to sign up for the program automatically, and then like $25 for the year, so that they had the ability to control that on peak periods. So Pepco has their own program, and they pay, I think, $16 a month during like the 3, 4, 5 summer months, whatever it is, So I'm in that program. I mean, and they actually give you a dollar amount based on how much control you want to give them in terms of the cutback. I think it's like 50%, 60%, whatever. The more you agree to let them cut you back, the more money they give you credit on your bill. So it's not like they didn't tell you what it was. It's just that these people didn't expect it to happen. They thought that was just a never possibility. Pepco, I mean, the limit with Pepco, what they do is that if they're going to have a peak day, they call you 24 hours in advance and let you know the next day is going to be a peak day, and that they might have to cut back your power consumption. They might have to basically, cut back the air conditioning for a 2-hour period of time or whatever, so they can reduce the load on the grid. But it's spelled out, okay? So yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with John here about you should be being terrified. On the other hand, it's like you need to also be educated. That you signed up for a program, you got money back. This is the deal that you forged. If you think it's a deal with the devil, then that's fine. But you signed up for that deal, so you got to live with the consequences. You can now opt out and get that out of there, and maybe the utility you will pay back the utility part of that credit they gave you for going into that program if you don't like it. But you got money back for that thing. You agreed to do that. Energy policy on the part of the government, yeah, I mean, this is the way they control things. It's like I have two smart thermostats in my house, but I've rarely had been subjected to a peak thing with Pepco where it's ever actually affected us where we've been bothered by it. It's just that there are enough people that panicked, that they just things kind of got out of hand here with that. But that is kind of the wave of what we're at. It's just they're trying to keep people from running their AC at 70 or whatever all the time. Yeah. In my house, I'm a pretty cheap guy. You're lucky if my AC goes below 80 in my house. Okay. For which I get a whole company comes. I get an earful from my wife about that. Okay. Yeah. But I've got a decent sized house. And if I'm cooling this house to a real comfort level, I'm spending a lot of money.
That's right.
So it's
just y'all too. Can you do it where you just cool certain rooms?
I have two zones. So I have the upstairs and the downstairs. So upstairs stays a lot warmer, because we're rarely up there.
Right.
But I don't let it go so high that it would be bad for the house, kind of a thing like that.
Right.
It's kind of like in the winter, right? You don't want to be so cheap that you turn your thermostat to the point where your pipes will burst. Right. Never ever do that. So you have to find that kind of that happy medium where it's like, I can live with this. The biggest problem really is that my wife and I, just like a lot of other people, we have different bodies, and so she's always hot. I'm moderate. I can live with this, but I know she's made a lot of sacrifice because I know I've driven her crazy with my whole thing. But it's like, well, how much money do you want to spend per month? It's so.
I hear you on the sacrifice by the wife too.
All right, let's go to the last word here. Final thoughts. Word.
Let's see. So I got to look down here. It's weird. You have something here about CNN's liberal purge. So they knocked off a guy the other day who had just made a really divisive comment in a news report. Then at in the 10 o'clock hour, and then at noon, he's tweeting, "Hey, I'm looking for different opportunities. Thanks for the ride." So it's interesting who they're picking, right? So Brian Stelter, what was the guy the other day? What's his name? John
Harwood.
Complete leftist hacks, both, right? But why not Don Lemon yet? Why not? I guess they told Tubin, we'll let you say you quit if you do it today. So that's three. But like Don Lemon's still there. Who's the guy on the news who's really bad? And Allison Camerata. They have some people there that are beyond hackish. And so now you're starting to see, like, I guess Keeler, Blair Keeler, is that her name? Breonna Keeler.
I think it's Breonna. Yeah.
Breonna Keeler. After the Biden, after the Independence Hall, the semi-fascist speech, came out and said, "Hey, that's too much. He overdid this. This was bad. He said bad things." And of course, people are like, "Oh, CNN's a sellout." I'm like, yeah, I agree. They're a sellout, but not like you do. I think Hillary is now saying she won't run again. I think that's probably right. Gorbachev, I did want to say something about that. Gorbachev went to the, I guess, Reykjavik summit, and they tried to talk Reagan into abandoning our first use, policy on nuclear weapons, that we would shoot first, and abandoning the Strategic Defense Initiative, the Iron Dome, I guess Israel calls it, but missile defense. And Reagan said, "No, these are, we'll share it with you." And the aides all rushed in. "Oh, we don't want to share." And, but it's like, we're not gonna not do it. We're gonna be, at that point, Gorbachev had a choice. He could start a war, unleash a nuclear attack on the U.S. and others, or he could call it a day and end the conflict. And so what he did was he called, and said, the leader of Hungary, and said to open the border with Austria so anybody who wants out can get out. And they got out, and that's what happened. And I think there were like 20-hour delays getting out of the country, but everybody who wanted to leave could leave. And once that happened, it was inevitable from there that the Berlin Wall would fall and the Soviet Union would fall. But he started that domino going by opting for peace when he clearly could have chosen war. So whatever else we think of him, he made a good call there.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with that. And yeah, I mean, yeah, on the CNN thing, it's just that it's funny to watch the liberals. They're getting kind of apoplectic right now because they're seeing these guys getting fired, and they're like, "Oh no!" It's like CNN is, they're purging their liberals. So this cannot be. They actually may move a little bit more to the center, and that seems to be frightening the heck out of them.
Yeah.
They're going to lose a liberal voice. Oh no, the media might actually.
Yeah, the other thing is that the other thing about along those lines, the special master. Like, why, you don't want to try to get into court and have a problem with attorney-client privilege, right? I mean, you want this checked out, but I mean, they are definitely afraid of this, and you're like, okay, why are you afraid of this? Do you not trust that the FBI conducted itself above board here? Because I could see not trusting the FBI, but I can't see it coming from you guys. So it'll be interesting to see.
Well, a more middle of the road CNN, that would be really interesting to see.
Yeah, it's what it was in the old days, and right. I watched it. I spent a lot of time on it then.
I do think, look, my father knew Ted Turner and had some interesting conversations with him and everything like that. And a lot of people didn't like Ted for lots of different reasons and things like that. And, he was a mercurial guy. I mean, he is just an interesting fellow. And, but you got to give him credit. I mean, when my father asked him to speak, at this, kind of the then conservative alternative to CPAC, when my father, Morton Blackwell, and Paul Wyrick thought that CPAC wasn't doing enough on grassroots, and they formed this, we formed an alternative conference, and he asked him to speak, and Ted's like, at a shareholders meeting, he said, "Oh, I can't do it this year, but invite him back next year." My father thought, that he's just blowing me off. And then, when he goes back the following year, Ted's like, "Well, what about that conference? Do you want me to come?" My father was really stunned. And, Ted came to Virginia, came to Crystal City Marriott over there. He came there, Gateway Marriott. He spoke there. Jane Fonda was in the audience. Bernard Shaw was in the audience. John Holland did a story on the vendors, the exhibit booths and stuff like that. So yeah, I still remember people sitting in the audience that are looking around, it's like, "Oh, that's Bernie Shaw," So Turner gave, nothing, an unmemorable speech, if you can say such. Nothing great about that. But I give a guy a lot of credit for doing that. And I think that's, those are the kind of things, he wanted things that just report the news, So you do a story on the Supreme Court, you talk to one side, you talk to the other side. That's the story. You decide who's right, who's wrong. You don't throw all the opinion on there and try to sway it to the, Brett Kavanaugh is the bad guy or whatever. Here's the story. Here's the pluses and minuses. Here's what we found on one side of Brett Kavanaugh. Here's what we saw on the other side. You decide, or something like that. And without a lot of the opinion. If you have an opinion show, you label it an opinion show. But it was a lot more open and honest in its early going than it became later on, as it kind of got corporatized, right, and everything like that. So
yeah, he was not for what Jeff Zucker tried to get, turn it into. He was not for that. I think what Chris Licht is trying to do is make it more in Ted Turner's vision.
Yeah, and I think they're just, they look at it as a business. I mean, they're looking at what does, and I think they see this partisan sniping, and they probably look at this as saying, this is really not good for business overall.
Right.
We have a broader vision of what we want CNN
Right.
to be.
Right. Because what you have now is with Trump out of office, they collapsed, right?
Right.
They didn't have anybody to hate on.
Right.
And if your franchise is hating on somebody, that you're in trouble when that person goes away.
That's right. You build your reputation, your franchise on hating Donald Trump. Donald Trump loses. He's out there, but he's not front and center. All your viewers go away, and then you're like, how do I make money?
Right.
So you might as well go ahead and strip it down. They're in a rebuilding process, like the Astros.
That's right.
Hopefully it'll be greater than it was in the past. All right, we spent a lot of time here, had a lot of fun. Hope you enjoyed watching us today. We thank you for joining us as always. Hope you stay safe and stay healthy. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And God bless America. And we will see you again next week. Yes. And John, yes, I'll believe it when Don Lemon's gone. Fine. All right. See you guys. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.